Hello, this is Edwin from Think to Win, and here with a new deck profile, and this time it's going to be about my friend's Aqua Force. Yeah, because the BT13 Tetra-Drive got released, so yeah, pretty much updated the Aqua Force deck, and right now it's a lot better than the Glory Maelstrom Transcore combination or with Revon, because that's really, it's not that good as with Tetra-Drive. So for the starter, we run Advanced Party Brave Shooter. This is the one that becomes 8k if you have 2 or less rearguards which are rested. Basically, you could run the Great Researcher as well, but the deck kinda lacks Counterblast. You can flip with the trigger, but still, paying 2 Counterblast for Tetra-Drive is really expensive. So we went with this one, and since usually, whenever one of us plays the decks, we always sack the break, right? So we don't need the Great Researcher. So that's we just run this one. Next for the trigger lineup, 6 draw, 6 crit, and 4 heal. All 4 heals obvious because heals always good. For the triggers, for the criticals, we run the 4 of the. If you put it into Soul, you can flip 1 damage because you need the Counterblast. And for the draws, we also use the one that can give a rearguard 3000 power. So yeah, so basically you can also fuel this with use this as fuel for your Soul Blast Penguin and the other 2 draws. And you run more draws because you need hand advantage, because you're basically rushing your opponent. And if you don't have any draw triggers in your deck, you cannot gain that hand advantage. Next for the grade 1 lineup, I run 4 Perfect Guards, 4 Wheel Assaults, 4 of the 7k, 10k if 2 or less guards which are rested, and 2 Soul Blast Penguin. Well, Penguin because you want to get the hand advantage. I mean, you basically don't have any draw engine in the whole deck, so having Penguin is real nice. This is pretty much for early rushing. In the early game, you don't have that many hitters, so having a 10k attacker is really good. Also, if you like early game, you can make rows like this with Wheel Assault, so you can still use it as a 10k attacker and have like a 70k row. Yeah. And Wheel Assault, this is one of the new cards from BT13. If you boost, you can counter +1 and swap a row around. So you can basically make a row on the other side of the field with 2 11ks and switch them around, making the 4th attack a lot easier. And 4 Perfect Guards because yeah, you don't want to get hit by big numbers because you couldn't guard them, so still mandatory in your deck. Next for the grade 2 lineup, 2 Basil, 4 Tidal Assault, and 4 of the 9k, 12k if you have less than 2 rested. Same reason as the 7, 10k, so you still want to use this early game, and yeah, you can still boost with it, so it still counts for the 2nd attack for Tetra-Drive. 12ks are very good in the whole game, but since Aqua Force doesn't have any of those generic ones, you need to use these. If you had the generic ones, you could use those, but there's no archetype 12ks for Aqua Force. Next for Tidal Assault, it's basically the Benedict clone, but then the grade 2 version, which is 9k. You attack the Vanguard, you can restand and minus yourself 5000k. So basically you can attack twice with the same card. Depending on your opponent's row, you can either do it boosted first, and then restand and attack for 4k. Basically that's the one I use, but you can also do it with 9k and then attack again, but that's less shield. If your opponent has a 9k Vanguard though, you can attack, then restand, and then attack with the booster, so you have 2 times 5000, which is a bit better than 1 times 10,000. And 2 Basil because you want to get the 4th attack mechanic in. Yeah, if you don't have Basil, it's a lot harder because then your only mechanic is either Tidal Assault or the Wheel Assault. So 2 Basil. And Basil skills is if you attack the Vanguard, it's the first attack of the turn, gains 2000 power, so it's 10,000. It goes back to rearguard and swaps with the one behind it. So it's like Wheel Assault but then counter +3, and this when it attacks. Next for the grade 3 lineup, 4 Transcore, Tetra-Drive, 1 Glory Maelstrom, and 1 Diamantis. 4 of the break ride because you want to ride that as early as possible, because if you don't get a break ride off, Tetra-Drive is basically just an 11k vanilla for the early parts of the game. Break ride skills, if you break ride, you gain 10k power and your opponent cannot guard unless they drop a card from their hand, and you also gain 1 critical before he drops a card. So a lot of players just drop a card, so you lose the critical, but that's still a -1, and if you attack twice with Tetra-Drive, you have to drop it twice, so that's a -2 at least. if they just no guard your Vanguard, but at 4 or 5 damage you usually guard it. So then 3 Tetra-Drive. Tetra-Drive Dragon is there's the counter plus skills. I think it's yes, plus 2000 for counter plus 1, and his other skill is the restand ability, which means that if you attack with this as your second attack, then if you have your fourth attack in, it has to be in the Vanguard, then you can play counter plus 2 and drop 2 cards and restand again and attack again. Basically a restanding Vanguard. It's very good, but the problem with the deck is that your attackers are pretty much 9k, 10k, 11k, so they don't hit for that much. But the restand ability is nice. Also, you can give it 2k power, so if you need to hit a cross ride, it can still hit for 13k. But the best is with the break card, because then if you attack again, you need to drop at least 1 card to be able to guard again. The Amantis is pretty much your Basil clone, but then crit 3. Yeah, so if this is the first attack against the Vanguard, it gains 2000 power, so it will be 11,000. So it can hit 11k Vanguards. If you're fighting against cross rides, it's kind of sad, but yeah, you need the fourth attack mechanic in. Yeah, and it also, when you attack, it goes back to the back row and you switch around with the one in the back. So yeah, it's basically for the fourth attack mechanic. So you have like these two, this one, 2 Basil, 4 Tidal Assault, and 4 Wheel Assault. So you have a lot of options for making the fourth attack. And lastly, Glory Maelstrom, because why not? If you attack and you're at 5 damage, ultimate break, counter plus 1, gains 5000 power, and your opponent cannot guard with grade 1 or higher. So you need to guard with grade 0s. The ultimate troll would be if you break right this over your Transcore and they do not expect it to be in your deck, and they're at 5 damage and they can guard. But other than that, yeah. So basic standard of the deck works pretty much just ride to grade 3 and try to get your fourth attack mechanic in by break riding. You could also run a grade 3 Searcher, but if you always get the break card off like we do, you can just run without the grade 3 Searcher, because that is technically a better booster. Since Tetra-Drive always needs to be the second attack, you always have less than 2 rested. Yeah, so that's pretty much it for the deck profile. If you guys like our videos, please like and subscribe, and see you guys at the next video.